Are you a business owner or employee who needs to network but is terrified of walking into a room full of people you don't know? Are you afraid of being left out of conversations or being awkward in the conversations you do have? Your tour guide, Faithann, is here to walk alongside you through the networking terrain, offering tips and tricks to network with ease. She'll also bring insightful interviews with successful business owners who have used networking to expand their businesses. Building relationships is the heart of networking, and generosity is the cruise ship that will navigate you toward those important relationships for your business or career. Grab your sunscreen and suitcase. Faith Ann is ready. Are you?
Hello there, and welcome to the Networkers Tour Guide podcast. I'm glad you found the show. Networking is providing opportunities for others that they would not have except for you, so that you have standing to ask for opportunities from people when you need them. How do we create opportunities for others, and how do we ask for those same opportunities? Well, that's what this podcast is all about. It's what I'm here for. Let's dive in to episode 54. Welcome to the Networkers Tour Guide podcast. If this is your first time coming to the podcast, get ready for a great episode all around leadership that you can use today in your networking meetings. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. I have a guest with me that I'm so excited to introduce you to, Kristen with the Triumph team. She's the Vice President of Organizational Leadership at the Triumph team, and we're going to have a great conversation. Kristen, thank you so much for saying yes to coming on the podcast.
Thank you for the invitation, Faith Ann. I'm happy to be here.
I met Kristen through networking a little bit, 3 or 4 people away, but that's how networking works.
hmm
You
hmm
meet one person who introduces you to another person who introduces you to another person. So, Kristen's the founders of the Triumph team. They are a window cleaning client, and I met one of the owners at my Business Networking International meeting, and just kind of stayed on the outside of a relationship with the Triumph team, but still like knowing what they do. And then I was invited to what Kristen has started recently, a Thrive networking group here in Norman. And I loved it. And she had such a great leadership training while I was there. I brought a few people and we all had great feedback. And then most recently, I went to a mother daughter training that she did at the same place. And so that was enough for me to say, I think that Kristen has some insight that will really help those of us in networking who are trying to start groups and grow groups. So before we get into that, Kristen, why don't you tell us how you got started in leadership and being so helpful to other leaders here in Norman?
Well, you're very kind. Thank you for that. Most of my career has actually been in higher education. I came to the University of Oklahoma as a 17-year-old freshman in college and spent the next several years really developing my personal confidence, my personal leadership skills, and learning from some really incredible mentors to the point that I didn't even realize this was a profession. One of those mentors asked me as I was about to graduate, "Have you ever thought about doing this?" And I just laughed because I hadn't. But that did lead me into a career, and the hallmark of that career has been training young leaders, training fellow staff people, and engaging and training myself because I really feel like your leadership confidence affects your confidence in every other area of your life. And so that's been my formative years were really focusing on leadership development and personal skills awareness so that I could become a better version of myself.
That's really cool. And it does seem like when you're trying to help us be better leaders, you're really interested in helping us grow as people, not just as the leaders of organizations. And we, in networking, we grow as people when we are trying to help others build their own businesses. It really lets us grow both our
Mhm.
own business from a revenue perspective, but also just from a personal growth and confidence. This confidence you were talking about,
Mhm.
that's really cool. So, what I wanted to kind of talk to you about today is your unique personality framework that I've never heard except you. And well, let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about why or how we can apply this to those of us who are growing networking groups or starting them.
The exercise is called Yuzu, and I developed it at the beginning of my career. I was at the University of Central Oklahoma in Edmond, and I saw a kind of a version of this tally sheet. It was a list of words, and we were asked to choose words that were like us, and then the facilitator used those words to help us identify the archetypes of personality as developed by Carl Jung, the psychologist Carl Jung. And as I was sitting there in the audience, I thought this has some serious potential. I can see students really loving the ability to notice things about personality, verbal skills, nonverbal skills, the way people show up, and then using that to actually learn how to better interact, better communicate. So I had a leadership retreat, a student leadership retreat that was going to be at the zoo, at the Oklahoma City Zoo. And I thought, I'm going to make this exercise into something that we can use as part of our training. So it's called the Yuzu personality exercise. And again, it relies on these archetypes to help people not really discover their personality. I think we all kind of know who we are. In fact, people are the experts on themselves. But the exercise underlines some things about their patterns of behavior, their patterns of communication, and those patterns can be helpful for people as a roadmap so that when you're walking into a room, maybe it's a room full of strangers, maybe it's a room full of friends, regardless, you can interpret the cues people are giving you so that you can have more efficient, more effective, more nourishing relationship in a short amount of time. You don't have to guess people. You can kind of watch them and observe and relate to them more effectively and more efficiently.
Yeah, so what I kind of took away from it is we all may want the same information from each other, but you were really helpful in explaining that depending on the kind of animal that your person that you're going to approach is, what do they want to know first
Mhm,
about a
mhm,
situation, which can be
mhm.
really helpful because when we're either wasting words or we're not giving enough words, we exacerbate each other because we think
Mhm,
everybody wants to receive information like we like to give it and like we like
mhm.
to receive it. But it's actually people, what the essence of a thing is different for different people based on
Well,
their personalities.
I agree. You know, when we transmit a message, it's not received the way we think it is many times. And we all know this in our families. We know this in our close friendships that you'll say something and it just doesn't land the way you think it's going to land, or the emotional response is totally different than what you expected from your kid after school when you're asking them about their day. So I do think that by being really sensitive and being aware of how people receive information and what, as you said, what question they need answered first, it just helps us to connect more efficiently so that the message you're transmitting is actually receiving. People are receiving what you say the way you mean for it to be interpreted. And that just makes everything feel easier. So it's much easier when people
Hmm.
understand what you're saying and why you're saying it.
Yes, and it's also easier when you're building rapport because that's
Mhm,
in networking, we talk a lot about rapport building, and you
mhm,
can break
mhm.
rapport by not understanding that important question that the person you're talking to is wanting to know, and you're going all around it. But to you, you're giving the most important thing. And the other thing that's challenging about networking is we're in our meetings, it's almost like we're not going deep, we're going wide because we're having
Mhm.
small conversations with several people instead of one conversation that's deep with one person. So it is kind of hard to navigate that a little bit, is if you haven't done it.
Mhm.
Everyone says, go network, you'll grow your business. Well, if you go network, but you don't know how to build rapport, then you're not going to grow your business. And then you're going to think networking doesn't work.
Exactly.
So I would, yeah, I would ask you, as you're having small conversations with a lot of people, what can you bring to somebody who's a little nervous about doing that? What tip would you have for that person?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think one of the first things that I recommend people do, and my experience with this has been with a lot of new students who are arriving with a huge cohort. Many of them were living on a residence hall floor with more people than they graduated from high school with,
Mm.
and really trying to teach them and equip them to, as you said, to network, to start creating a connection with different groups of people on campus. And one of the things I would ask them to do first is to look people in the eyes. I think there's a tendency to look everywhere but in the eyes, and your eyes tell the story. And so we would talk about the difference between your authentic smile and kind of your artificial smile. It's really about us. To use my photographer friend Ryan Lasseter's words, a squinching of the eyes, that you're looking at someone and you're taking them in, so you're actually noticing things about them. And when you really start with the eyes, it allows you to interpret some behaviors a little differently. You might notice body language, closed body language, if someone's arms are folded, if their hands are behind their back, if they're maintaining a distance from you. You might pull from this interaction that this person might be a little shy, or I haven't established enough relational trust in this room, or maybe they have had an overwhelming day. And so I'm only going to notice that if I'm really paying attention. So that's the first thing I tell students to do is pay attention to what's happening, the volume that someone's using to answer a question from you. Are there special challenges? Can people hear in the room? Do you need to pull them aside so that that message is transmitted and received the right way? What can you notice just by watching that person, the way they smile at you? If you're listening to how many words come out of their mouth, in a minute, do they have a nervous energy? Do they just feel excited to be there? I definitely feel like the playing yuzu for the past 25 years, and I've played this game thousands and thousands of times. I've played it with 4th graders, and I played with my grandmother's ultra society and, all different groups in between. And I think that one of the things I've noticed is the patterns of people's behavior help you to make sure that you're tailoring your message so that it establishes trust. And one of the things we say around here at Triumph is trust is earned in drops, but it's lost in buckets. And
Oh,
so really establishing interpersonal trust, interpersonal safety, even if you only have a quick moment, that rapport, as you call it, that rapport is magical. And people will make a lot of judgments and assessments in that short amount of time. So by paying attention to the feedback that you're getting, you can adjust your message, your delivery, and help earn drops and drops and drops of trust in someone's bucket so that hopefully that networking contact becomes a long-term relationship.
yes, and it happens all the time, all over the
Mhm.
city,
Mhm.
every hour of the
Yep,
day.
exactly.
Are you willing to share? You don't have to go into each personality in depth, but would you be willing to share the question for each person that they want answered?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have a personality, we call them the lion. They tend to be competitive, they tend to be goal-oriented and strategic visionaries. The lion's central question is what? What do you expect from me? What do you need? What does success look like? What is our goal? And they're driven by goal accomplishment, task management, and this idea that being excellent is the number one vision for our company, our number one vision for me as an individual, right? Lions are confident and they're great decision makers. Porpoises are the social creatures. These are people that love other people. And so they're mostly interested in who's in the room, who do I know, who can I connect with today? And that's their central question is who? Who's going to be there? Who can I serve? They're motivated by collaboration and inclusion and celebration. These are the kinds of things that they love. They love everything to be positive, and they love to engage with people who are positive. The koala is the personality that's a little bit more reserved. They tend to listen more than they speak, which makes them super adept at noticing what's happening in the room, the emotions that people are experiencing. They like to have plans and then more plans because their central question is how? How is this gonna happen? How are we gonna arrive at that destination? How are we going to accomplish this goal? And so they love a process, a repeatable process that they can predict and anticipate. They do not love to be surprised. They do not love chaos. And so that the how question enables them to put kind of the dominoes in order so that they don't feel themselves being surprised very often. They like to really know what's going to happen. And again, I want to point out koalas could be very talented up in front of a group, but they're going to not prefer that role because it's going to drain their battery. So I never want the that I encounter in this game to think that they're kind of, on the outside of performance or speaking in front of a group or leadership. They're very much included in leadership and they're great at listening. And then the last one is the eagle. The eagle is the logical, sensical personality style that likes things to be just a certain way. And they love a system. They love order over chaos. They love things to make sense. And they will put those things in order for other people because we all know that we need eagles in our lives to make things go, to make the
Yeah.
system hold, right? And so their question is usually why. When they're describing a process or a plan to you, they'll give you all of the context and information that they needed to make that decision. So their central question is why? Why are we doing this? Why is this the way this is being handled? Why are we motivated toward this goal versus that goal? And when you can answer the why for the eagle and you inject all the logic and sense that you can into that question, they'll follow you into battle at any time, but they need to know that why first before they really engage in problem solving, which they're excellent at.
Mm. And when I took your test both times, I was the eagle, and I loved what you said. Eagles have a plan B and a plan C, and I leaned over to
And a
my
D, and
yeah.
maybe a D point two, point three.
And
Lots of plans.
yeah, I leaned over to my daughter and I'm like, she's so right because that morning of the conference, I had a plan B. I was like, okay, well, if we can't, because there was a mix up about registration, and I'm like, okay, girls, this is what we're gonna do. If we can't go to the conference, then we'll go to breakfast. Okay, but we're still gonna be together.
We're gonna be together. Well, I'm glad it worked because we were
Yeah.
so happy to have you.
Yeah, well, we had a great time, and of course the plan B is not the plan A. I mean,
Right.
it's for me, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, if this doesn't work, like I gotta have my process.
Hey, networkers! If you want your next one to one to go beyond swapping business cards, Faith Ann's got something for you. She created a free resource called 10 Questions to Ask in a One to One. It's packed with thoughtful questions that help you get to know someone and leave a lasting impression. Click on the 10 Questions link in the show notes and download this resource today.
So now that we know, these questions, and Kristen, as you were talking, something occurred to me, like all four of the animals want a good outcome. That's the
Mhm.
important thing. And I think maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if you have a team and they all want the same outcome, it's cool and it's good to have these different animals. What could be troubling, I think, is when they're not all wanting the same outcome. Then that's
Mhm.
hard, isn't it?
It is. It could be hard. It's also, I think, challenging for teams. And that's, I spend the majority of my time at Triumph now working with teams who will tell me when they invite us into their company, hey, we have an execution problem. We are not hitting our sales numbers. We are seeing high turnover. We are not getting customers through the door that we want. And so they perceive the challenges of their organization as execution issues. But really, if you dial that back, it comes from alignment. Maybe the resources and the personalities and the people and the time aren't aligned for maximum goal outcome. And if you dial that back, you peel the onion back a little bit on alignment, you realize that alignment really exists when the relationships at your organization are strong. When your family is communicating well and everyone knows where they're supposed to be and what their role is. When your friendship group has a clear view of how to pursue and maintain that friendship, that alignment comes from great relationships. And the last layer you pull back is that relationships comes from excellent communication. So when I have been playing this game thousands of times, what I'm usually talking about is how can you communicate at a core level with maximum efficiency? And how does communication lead to amazing execution? And then ultimately, capacity. Anyone wants their organization to succeed. And as you said, we all want our teams to win. Everyone wants to win. But if we're not thinking about how we get there, and we're not dialing it back to the bolt tightening of our communication, then we're going to have a lot of trouble executing, and we're going to have a lot of trouble reaching our maximum capacity as organizations, as families, as friendship groups, because it just comes down to that simple communication that we have to make sure is foundationally solid.
Well said. Oh, now's the time that I'm really excited to hear your insight on this. So, having now that we know the personality animals, and as listeners, as you're listening to Kristen talk about the most important question, you may be saying, "Okay, yeah, that's me. I'm the lion, or I'm the eagle." But here's the kicker. If you are trying to start a networking organization or grow one, likely you're not doing it by yourself. And so if you've got four lions and you don't have any eagles to kind of uh, get down in the nitty gritty of things, or you have all these eagles but you don't have that motivator, that lion saying, "Let's go," and the other animals, then you may really struggle. So that would be what I would love for you to tell us about in thinking about maybe two or three people, a team that they've started a referral club and they're wanting it to grow, and assuming that the club itself wants to grow. What can they be thinking about when it comes to the leadership of that group?
Great question. I usually play this game and finish with this idea that the best teams are a combination of these animals, and that leadership is really like zookeeping. Our job is to make sure that every animal has what it needs to thrive. I do think some of the animals work naturally with other animals. So, for example, lions and eagles, our visionaries and our detail managers work very well in teams because they're confident in their role. So the lion comes in with the big strategy and vision. Hey, let's have a company barbecue. And the eagle comes in with, awesome, we're going to need wet wipes and a permit for the park
Oh,
that we're
right.
going to have the barbecue at. And we're going to need garbage bags and paper plates. And so I find in teams where everyone's aware of their role and how they come off the bench, those teams tend to find their execution being really efficient. And when they master the communication with one another and understanding their role, they're great. I see the same thing with koalas and porpoises. Porpoises are all about who, and koalas are about how. And many people will tell me who are high scoring porpoises that all of their best friends are koalas because they're constantly thinking about everyone's feelings in the room, who's included, who has been gathered into the circle. So I think if you were starting something like this, and really starting any organization, if you have the ability to curate a little bit, is to think about, okay, what are the things that we need to accomplish together, and who is the best suited, who will be able to pick up that responsibility, and it'll feel weightless to them because it comes naturally to them. So how do we engage people's natural strengths? And I also think that you don't have to be all of these animals. Probably most of us operate with two most of the time. So I'll tell people in the game, your top two scores in this tally sheet are likely your top two animals, and you've got the strengths and superpowers of both of those types with you. And so I know a lot of lions who their second is eagle, and so they really have to lean into it. Now, it doesn't mean it's as easy as if it was their first personality. They may be relying on their second personality, but that's fine. We'll take it. We'll take these skills however we can get them.
Right.
But I do think if you can curate a team, really start thinking about, okay, who on this team is going to be thinking about our potential membership and welcoming them to meetings, or Zoom meetings, or sending our outreach, like who is going to manage the administrative logistic details of actually accomplishing our work, and who will find satisfaction in that, who will that feel like unconscious competence for them, who is going to stand, as you said, and be a visionary, kind of a motivator, who's going to stand and welcome everyone to the meeting and sell this idea so that people will come back. And then letting people kind of raise their hand for either what feels natural to them, or maybe where they want to challenge and push themselves, because that's what they want to be able to provide in a role on an organization like this. I just think allowing people to be who they are and then naturally using those gifts is probably the number one strategy that would help a group come together.
Yeah, I agree. Our founder of BNI, Dr. Ivan Meisner, says to work in your, now it's leaving me, but it's about your fire, your flame, like work in your
Mm,
flame and not your wax or something. Like things that are hard for some people are very easy for others. And so rather than trying to make somebody fit into a role that
mm,
they aren't suited for, try and find out what seems easy and let them do that. I think that visitor hosts, and not every networking organization has a specific title like a person who is the visitor host, but those visitor hosts, those are probably the porpoises, right? And,
oh, yes.
they're the ones like as soon as you walk in the door, they're like, "Hello, I'm so glad to see you." I think that if you're starting a networking group and you haven't really thought about who's going to do that, like let's
Hmm.
just say that three people want to start a group, but none of them really are a porpoise. They're
Hmm.
all like the lion and the eagle. I
Hmm.
think it would be very important to say, okay, we got to find us a porpoise, like, or we're not going to
Definitely.
last.
Definitely. Or we need to find some koalas who are there to have quiet one-on-one conversation because not everyone wants a parade when they arrive at the event. Some people want to sneak in the back and sit in the dim corner and just take it in, and that's okay too. So I think the advantage of having a leadership team, a guiding team, or at least a support team that understands the personalities that could walk in the door is it's always an advantage.
Yeah. As we wrap this up, I do have one final question, but let me ask you this real quick. I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna let you say it, so I don't have
Okay.
to be the bad guy. So I am Mary, the excited entrepreneur who's decided that I'm gonna start a brand new networking group, and I'm gonna do it all by myself. And I've had several offers. Oh, I'll like to help you, and I say, no, 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 I got it, I got it. I'm gonna do it. I don't want to bother you. Is that a good strategy or a bad strategy?
Faithann, I think that is a challenging strategy. That would to me is like trying to run a zoo by yourself. Because the fact of the matter is that leadership is about number one, self-awareness, but number two, it's about others' awareness and emotional intelligence and being able to identify and meet the needs of the person that meets you. So we kind of I say in this game, the golden rule, let's reverse it. How do others wish to be treated? And if you're trying to do something on your own, many times, which I'm guilty of. I do this all the time. Mostly, I don't want to shift burden to someone, right? So I find myself not delegating. I get it. I get it. Entrepreneurs out there who are running solo shows, but the disadvantage is that you can't possibly think of all the perspectives, all of the needs, all of the provisions that could be in place as you would if you had a team surrounding you. And so that support, even if it's just the support of perspective, here's what other people are going to be thinking when you present this information. Here's how this opportunity is going to land when you offer it to the community as you get your networking group started, just to be able to spitball and bounce information off people and use their feedback is so important for your success. You're maximizing your success.
I agree. I agree. Okay. Well, if teams or if some people want to start a networking group, would you be able to do this yuzu with them before they even start? Is that something you can do?
Oh, absolutely. They can reach out to us at triumphteam.com. I facilitate this activity with all kinds of industries, all kinds of groups. There's a short version of it. We can come in and do it in 2 hours, or we can build a full day training around this, whatever people need. But I'm also willing to send them the tally sheet so they can have an idea of what they are before they even enter into the exercise. I'm happy to share this. All of us are smarter than one of us, and so I appreciate people being engaged in the activity and building their own self-awareness. So we're happy to help however we can.
Well, that's very generous of you to provide that resource, and we'll link the Triumph Team website in the show notes. And
Great.
last question for you, Kristen. Thank you again for coming on. It's been a wonderful conversation. If you could tap your younger self, maybe right out of college, as you're going into a career of leadership, and tap your younger self and give yourself some insight, what would that be?
the best question, Faithann. I'm going to steal this question. I'm going to ask people this from now on. I think I have two answers. The first is that my expectation should be progress, not perfection. I think my desire to be good at what I do, to serve others, to do it in a positive way, sometimes prevents me from being patient enough to let that grow and stir and develop. I want the microwave, and what I needed is a crock pot.
Mm.
So that's one part of my advice to myself. And I think the second part of my advice would be to really truly take time to appreciate relationships, because the relationships are the pivotal point for almost every good thing that happens to us. Almost every opportunity we have is because someone we met made it possible. And so I love what you do. I love what you're encouraging people to do. Networking groups are the place where those relationships could be born. And so, as a 21-year-old fresh out of college, I appreciated my mentors, but I don't think I fully understood their role in my continued development, happiness, health, and success. And that's why I love playing this game, is I love to help people build better relationships so that their lives can be more fulfilled.
I love your answer. Thank you so much. Again, what a great person. I'm so glad that we came to know each other, and I wish you all the success, you and your team over there at Triumph, as you move forward and try and make people better.
Thank you, Faith Ann. I feel the same way about you.
Oh, thank you.
You've been listening to the Networkers Tour Guide podcast with Faithann Basore. Share this episode with a friend, and be sure to come back next week for more networking tips and tricks from the Networkers Tour Guide.